I've managed to secure an interview with David Shayler. Now, David is an ex-MI5 Secret Service agent. He was a spy for the UK government. David's also got an alter ego named Dolores, who he refers to as a tranny. Okay, so David is a cross-dresser. This is why I'm bringing him to the channel. But what I also want to do is talk about David's life and David's backstory. He blew the whistle on an MI6 plot to kill Colonel Gaddafi from Libya, and he had to go on the run overseas. Some people have said he's mad, but he proclaimed himself as the Messiah. You will not see stuff like this on the BBC News. You won't see it on ITV News. You won't see it on Sky. You won't see it on Channel 4. You won't see it anywhere else, all right? And you're seeing it on the Edge of the Matrix channel.
MI6 technically have a license to kill, but they'd have to get clearance from the Foreign Secretary first. That operation went wrong, killing innocent civilians, but also obviously it was funding people with connections to Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden. At the time, I remember reading this report, my blood just ran cold. I did not want to be on the side of terrorists. I'd actually stood in the reconstructed fuselage of flight PA-103, the one that was blown up over Lockerbie. This man was someone called, later on, was Abedi basically. The father, Ramadan Abedi, the father of Salman Abedi, who's involved in the Manchester bombing. But if he had a plan to murder Princess Diana because she's about to have Dodi Al-Fayed's child, that's going to create all sorts of complications, this would be a bloody good time to kill her. In Britain, I went into Belmarsh, which is a maximum security prison. So I found out that he was actually a serial killer. He'd actually killed 4 people. He'd actually been caught as well, because he'd killed one and left him in the boot of his car. So in France, I had a conversation with Carlos the Jackal, who was once the world's most wanted terrorist. So, I'm quite a convincing tranny. I've seen the pictures of myself, and I can be. When I was about 4, basically, I put my mum's nightie on. So he's going, quite you quote, I'm like a little stiffy. One of them goes, "Do you think you're a woman?" I said, "No, I'm obviously a bloke dressed as a woman." He went, "Oh, right, okay." Psychiatry to me is just pure evil. I think the whole even the medical industry should be disowning itself from psychiatry. It's absolutely no evidence to support the idea of any kind of pandemic or deadly disease or even new disease. The age of politics is over, Choosing between left and right is like choosing between Jeffrey Epstein and Rolf Harris to babysit your teenage daughters. I'm Jesus Christ, if you're in the West. I'm the one, chosen by God.
David, for those people that are watching today that don't know who you are, would you just like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, basically, I first came to attention in 1997 when I blew the whistle. I was an MI5 officer for 5 years. I worked in counter-subversion, counter-terrorism against the IRA and against the Libyan target and on Lockerbie. And I was briefed on an operation by MI6 in which they were paying a Libyan military intelligence officer to lead a group of Islamic extremists to assassinate Gaddafi and replace him in a coup. That operation went wrong, killing innocent civilians, but also obviously it was funding people with connections to Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden. And they did it without the permission of government as well, so it could not be justified under English law. It's still a criminal offence. And as a result of that, I've been to prison a couple of times. I've been on an extraordinary journey. I've got involved with things like 9/11 Truth, teaching common law, stuff like that, and doing research about the pandemic and viruses. So that's my story in a nutshell, really.
Okay, so how did you first get into working for MI5?
In the media section of The Independent was an advert saying Godot isn't coming. Now, if people who are not au fait with the theatre of the absurd, this is based on a play called Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, in which the eponymous character of Godot doesn't turn up. That's the kind of joke. And I'd studied this play in both French and English, and I now think this advert was what is called in the service a come-on. That these people knew about me and they wanted to attract my attention with this advert. And the description they gave of the job was very like journalism. Are you up with current affairs? Can you write? Can you analyse information? So the first interview was done by this recruitment consultant. It was a few intelligence tests, basic stuff. And then he said, "What have you done to change the world?" Because I thought it was journalism. I said, "Well, I stood up to the authorities, published extract of spy catcher, it was under injunction, and all this sort of stuff." And then you get phoned up and you get invited to the next interview, and it's in an unmarked building in London. The first thing you get there, and you think, a bit weird. There's no plaque on this. There's no company or government plaque or whatever. It's a bit strange. And you walk in, it's this deserted office. What appears to be a deserted office block, and you're just using like one room in there. It's like, what the hell's going on here? So the guy says, why are you here? And of course you don't want to say, it's got to be intelligence. He goes, come on, you're an intelligent man, why do you think you're here? I said, it's got to be MI5. And he said, yes.
Okay, so when you got into MI5, what was your job? What was your role there?
Firstly, I was posted to vetting, very briefly. Highly bureaucratic, I don't know what the hell they put me there first. Then I got transferred for a few weeks to the counter-subversion section. This is where the communists and the anarchists and the Trotskyists. And obviously this is the early 90s, this is 91, so it's closing down basically, early 92. And I wrote the paper that closed down MI5's 75 years study of communism, beginning in 1917 with the Russian Revolution. And to give you an idea of this, the personal file number 2 is Lenin, personal file number 3 is Trotsky.
Okay, so...
then I went to the counter-Irish section.
Yeah.
There was a new section set up because MI5 had taken over prime responsibility for intelligence gathering against the IRA on the British mainland. I was part of the North East. I had a successful case of a man called Sean McNulty, who actually was a Geordie but of Irish descent. And my work helped lead to the first intelligence-led conviction against the IRA on the British mainland by MI5. He got 22 years, but was released in the Good Friday Agreement, but I worked in other cases stopping terrorism. I then got posted in October 94 to the Libyan section, so dealing with the aftermath of Lockerbie when people had been murdered, over 270 people had been killed as a result of the plane going down as a bomb. And I had a chance to have what I call, because I'd actually seen the conspiracy theories before I joined MI5, so I could sit there and have a conspiracy theorist wet dream. I could go through all MI5's files on it, yeah, and I did, and realised it was the Libyans. It really was. All the evidence pointed that way, and that the conspiracy theories about Iran and the Palestinians being involved were all coming out of MI6, basically false information.
So this is new to me because I thought that Iran was responsible as a revenge for the USS Vincennes shooting down the Iranian airliner. Yeah. So are you telling me that that's not the case?
Not the case, no. What happened was, people will know that the US bombed Tripoli in 1986 in Libya, trying to kill Gaddafi. And those planes had taken off from Britain, so we were complicit in that attack. This was a war crime, basically. So in revenge, Gaddafi ordered Lockerbie. I know we don't know whether Gaddafi ordered it. The head of the security of the Libyan intelligence services wanted to take revenge for that attack. But it took the Libyans 2 years to get the timers together and everything else. So in 1988, when Lockerbie goes down, because this Palestinian cell has been arrested in Frankfurt in October 1988 in an operation called Autumn Leaves of the PFLPGC, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command, everyone assumes that that's the bombing. But this is where I can come in my detailed knowledge, is that because of a man called Marwan Krisa, who was the bomb maker, was speaking, he said, well, I made 5 bombs I put into Toshiba cassette recorders. I can account for 4 of them, I can't account for a 5th, so people reasonably assume that's the Lockerbie bomb. But he actually said these were on barometric timers and they were single speaker Toshibas. But as a result of looking for that missing bomb, they put out a warning to the world's airlines, which of course included Libyan Arab Airlines. So they get a warning to look out for a Toshiba cassette recorder. So they decided to use a Toshiba cassette recorder for their bomb as cover. But crucially, their one was a stereo one. It wasn't single speaker, and it was just a straight timer, basically. It wasn't a barometric timer. So the forensic shows it was a different type of bomb from that, basically. And so I've gone to MI6 with their agents, said, look, if Iran did this, or the PFL's PGC, put this back to your agents. Tell us something about Lockerbie that's not publicly known. If you can do that, I might believe you. But if you can't do that, you're just making this up, basically. That's the test, obviously.
Okay, so MI5 is the domestic secret service,
yeah,
and MI6 is the international secret service. Am I correct in saying that?
Broadly speaking, MI5 is a security service, so it gathers intelligence, but it also assesses it. and does all sorts of things like the height of walls outside air bases and document security. It's a general security service, and its work can be used, and some intelligence can be converted to evidence and be used in court. MI6 is super secret. It's supposed to be international, but it operates in Britain, it really does.
Okay, so you had an opposite number in MI6. Tell me about him.
Yeah, a man called David Watson, basically. He was head of the Libyan subsection MI6, and I was head of the Libyan subsection MI5. And the two organisations really don't trust each other at all. And the only time I ever saw fisticuffs in a sort of domestic situation in the service was where somebody had passed on some intelligence or something, and these MI5 and MI6 officers squared up over the desk and threatened fisticuffs, basically. Had to be physically dragged apart. Only time I ever saw that. And so yes, but I'd run a business, so my sort of thing was, let's build a relationship with these people. What can we do for you? What you can do something for us, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But let's have common targets and things like this. So I had this 3-monthly meeting, so they're going to trust me. So when they came to talk about this Gaddafi plot, the guy came into summer '95. I got a sort of phone call saying I can't discuss this over an open line. So I went over to the MI6 building and he briefed me on this operation. He told me what had happened. They'd walk into the Tunis embassy, British embassy in Tunis. And this guy had said, I'm leading this group of Islamic extremists. He was a Libyan intelligence officer, and that checked out.
What did they say his name was at the time?
At the time, I saw his name at the time. I did think for a while, because I kind of forgot it. I thought it was Abdullah Radwan. That was sort of a name that came up in the context of the Libyan coverage of the attack, where they caught this man. But I realised that this man was someone called, later on, was Abedi, basically. The father, Ramadan Abedi, the father of Salman Abedi, who's involved in the Manchester bombing.
Okay, so he was a walk-in.
Yeah.
So he walked into the UK embassy in Libya, is that correct?
No, in Tunis.
In Tunis, sorry.
Yeah.
And what was his proposal?
His proposal was they were going to assassinate Gaddafi in a coup thing, remove him, assassinate him, and then take power in Libya. And part of what they would also do is hand over these 2 Lockerbie suspects for trial. And that would be an MI6 objective as well, which would have been a massive diplomatic coup. So MI6 were all up for it. Obviously you need money to be able to fund the operation. You basically got to pay your men and have your weapons and your vehicles and stuff. And I kept asking this MI6 officer about these payments, basically. And at one point, just before Christmas 1995, literally days before my 30th birthday, he told me, after I badgered him, that they had paid money to them. And he told somebody else in MI5 that as well, because they came to me afterwards and said, oh my God, MI6 is paying people to carry out terrorism. And I said, yeah, no, they told me as well. Now at this point, I kind of didn't think this operation was going to go ahead, because they'd come up with these crazy ideas before and nothing had come of them, just been quietly forgotten, yeah. And then, so in February 1996, I get 2 GCHQ reports across my desk almost simultaneously, describing events in Libya exactly as they planned to do so. They put out a report which was circulated to government, showing the modus operandi. They were going to attack Gaddafi's car in a cavalcade, and, get in there, kill Gaddafi, get out again. And they got the wrong car in the cavalcade, basically. So 11 civilians had died as a result of this attack. So it's innocent victims of terrorism, basically. And I say at the time, I remember reading this report, my blood just ran cold. I did not want to be on the side of terrorists. I'd actually stood in the reconstructed fuselage of flight PA-103, the one that was blown up over Lockerbie. And so I stood in there and had a moment where I tried to imagine what it was like the passengers. You see the cockpit just break off, which what happened to you? You'd be conscious for a few seconds. And that feeling, that fear they must have felt and everything, I kind of imagined, and that's what motivated me to really bring those Lockerbie suspects to justice. And I did. I opened a channel that was subsequently, even if I'd left the service, but I opened the channel with a man called Suleiman Barouni, through the MI6 agent runner, that got the 2 Libyans to The Hague for the trial, basically.
So just to be clear now, there was an assassination attempt on Colonel Gaddafi, paid for by British taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
Okay, organised by MI6 through the walk-in that came into the UK embassy. Did that assassination attempt have to be signed off by a UK minister?
Yeah, under the 1994 Intelligence Services Act, the MI6 technically have a licence to kill, but they'd have to get clearance from the Foreign Secretary first. And Malcolm Rifkind, who was the Foreign Secretary at the time, a Conservative, has on the record making it absolutely clear he gave no permission whatsoever for this operation. And I had raised this when I was in the service. When MI6 got to a point, I thought, I'm going to have to tell people in MI5 about this. So I went and briefed my boss. And I said, you know, I've asked them about the permission issue, and he's kind of brushed it off. He sort of said yes, but I really don't believe him. I think you've got to do something about this, because they're about to launch a terrorist attack in Libya, and they don't have permission from the government. But of course, MI5 didn't do anything about it. You know, it's obviously too much hot potato for MI5 management to get involved in. So I made all that clear when I was there, absolutely.
Okay, is it possible it could have been just rogue operatives in MI6 doing it without authority?
No, because the guy I was speaking to, I met his boss as well. So I know it at least went up to that level of management, which is fairly high. You know, we're not talking about some low middle manager, we're talking someone in the upper echelons of management. So I know it went that far up, yeah.
Okay, so you said you...
I've got to say, the guy who was head of MI6 at the time, whose name I'm struggling to remember at the moment, he died at a relatively young age after he retired, which I found slightly suspicious as well. Thinking that it might, well, I don't know, I get very suspicious in the world of conspiracies, massing an early death like that. I do tend to think the worst. He perhaps had given permission for it. I don't know whether he's having regrets about that and coming to conscience, I don't know, but he died suspiciously early.
Okay, so you said when you heard the news that your blood ran cold, so what actions did you then take?
Yeah, well, say this point, I did go and obviously tell my bosses this had happened. I said, beforehand, I said to them, I know they got permission for this. I said, this has now happened. I was obviously at the time trying to contain some anger because they hadn't done anything about it. And I went in there and said, you know, it's MI6, and they just basically told me to just go away, basically, be quiet kind of thing. But that was obviously, when they told me they paid the money before Christmas 1995, that was when in my heart I left the service. I went home that Christmas, I had 2 weeks off. And it was coming my 30th birthday, and I obviously thought I was going to be a journalist or a news editor or something age of 30. But no, here I am in the middle of this thing where I'm party to a terrorist operation. I thought, what happened to my life? This is just insane. And so I wanted to leave, and obviously when the attack then happened, I accelerated that process. And so by September, October 96, I'd left the service.
Okay, so you famously blew the whistle.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to talk us through what happened then?
Yeah, what happened is I first met a journalist before I'd left MI5, yeah, because I wanted to get this MI6 thing out there. I thought I can't live with this. I've got to get this out there. And I'd obviously used the intelligence service techniques. I got a mate to act as a cutout. He phoned around Fleet Street, and he identified the best bloke to talk to. Who happened to be a bloke from the Mail on Sunday called Nick Fielding. And we met up in a pub in Soho called the Three Greyhounds. I just sort of gave him outlines of some of the stuff I wanted to talk about. They'd bugged the phone of a Guardian journalist, they'd let a Libyan terrorist into the country, all this sort of stuff. And so I gave them the outlines of it and say, look, I want to talk about this, but off the record, yeah. And they sort of went back and they said, oh, off the record won't work. And I was still working at the time, so I said, I can't go on the record, you know, while I'm working there. But also then I got a jobs and management consultant in October 1996. But then I remember by December 1996, I was still meeting this journalist and chat through stuff. And then in December 96, I just said to him, I said, look, I can't live with this. I've got to go on the record. I've got to tell this story. Eventually, by August 97, it came out in the Mail on Sunday. It all happened very quickly. I went up to their offices, did a 3-day debrief, got on a plane on the Friday night, jetted down in Amsterdam.
So you basically went on the run?
Yeah, I went on the run. I had to get out obviously before it was published. So I was on the front page of the Mail on Sunday, but none of the other papers had it because they were first editions. I had a chance to copy it. When I looked at the later editions, it was all over the place. I didn't realise that at the time. Yeah, and so it was very funny. Obviously, firstly leaving Britain that Saturday morning, I remember looking down and seeing the wheels leaving the tarmac and thinking, is this the last time on British soil ever? You know, are they going to kill me? Are they going to take my evidence? Am I just going to be living in exile forever? What's going to happen here? This is insane.
So you were in Europe,
Yeah.
initially in the Netherlands, in Holland, and you appeared on front of the Mail on Sunday. So you became a wanted man internationally. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, no, they didn't put out the arrest warrant straight away for me. In fact, what was really weird was there was just this silence from the whole thing for about 24 hours. People reporting what I'd said, and the Mail on Sunday leaking that I still had more important stuff to say. And then I did this on the Monday. I got on a phone call from my lawyer John Wadham, and I met the BBC in the Amstel Hotel in Amsterdam and did this interview with Michael Crick, one of their quite high-profile correspondents, and which I just obviously elaborated. I didn't mention any new disclosure. I just elaborated on what I'd already talked about. We then had this thing where we were scooting around Holland, staying in different hotels, and then on the Saturday morning we decided to head right down to south of France, Bayonne, get as far away from where we've been as possible. And we head through Paris that day, and as I'm going on the train down to Bayonne, I get a phone call from the Mail on Sunday, and they tell me that the government's banned us, taken out an injunction, which is kind of all part of the plan, really. The banned us, that's going to make the story even more enormous than it already is. And of course, I've been obviously getting the papers abroad during the week to check what they were saying about me. But at the same time, I've been watching these stories about Princess Diana on Dodi Al-Fayed's yacht and saying she's got to make an announcement, and they're all pointing at what looks like a pregnancy belly, yeah, early pregnancy. And so we get down to Bayonne, we check into a hotel, and I remember going to bed that night thinking, this is it. I can't think how we can lose this. With the whole thing's going out, there's an injunction. That gives me a right to speak to the government if they're banning it, you know. And obviously all the papers across the world love stories about MI5 and MI6. The idea that former MI5 officers on the record wants to talk about something they banned him. This was going to be dynamite. And then the next morning I got up and there was a documentary about Princess Diana on. And that was the night Princess Diana died in Paris. Now, I say to people, I don't think they killed Diana to knock me out of the news. But if they had a plan to murder Princess Diana because she's about to have Dodi Al-Fayed's child, and that's going to create all sorts of complications, this would be a bloody good time to kill her. And I really do believe that is how the other side work. They want to take multiple things out when they do something, and that's exactly what they did then. They just knocked out the headlines. And of course, nothing happened in Britain for months, it seems, weeks. So we were just, that was it. I thought, what the hell are we going to do? But we managed to find a little farmhouse to live in, friend's farmhouse. So all this weird stuff happened, and then the next night, coming back to my hotel, and the man in the lobby comes up to me and says, "Êtes-vous Monsieur Shayler?" And I thought it was hotel stuff. I said, "Who are you?" kind of thing. He said, "La Police Nationale." And that was the moment I was arrested. But fortunately, I said, "I've got to get my pièce d'identité, my passport." And it wasn't in my room, but I knew they'd have to go up to the room and talk to Annie. So Annie knew I'd been arrested. She then phoned the Mail on Sunday journalist I was meeting. And it was on, hold the front page in London, and it was Paris swoop on MI5 man.
Okay, so you then got put in prison in Paris, was that correct?
Yeah. I got this weird day of my life where I get arrested about 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday. Start to think I'm being abducted by terrorists. These people look so rough and ready, even though they've shown me ID. And then we get to where they're taking me, which is the Ministry of the Interior. And we come out in this lobby. And I say, "You have to mention me to your friends. I've been here before." This was all in French, because I speak French. I spent a year in France in 86, 87. So I was explaining to them that I'd been here to meet the Libyan section when I'd been in MI5, which had assessments about the Libyan target. Once they learned that, they were all very much different. Because the Brits had told them I was a super spy. I was a genuine traitor spy who'd been selling secrets and all this sort of thing, which obviously I wasn't. I was a whistleblower. And obviously I was in prison waiting an extradition. It's not like you've got a sentence where you've got the light at the end of the tunnel. I was just ticking a day off, basically.
Okay, so how long did you serve in the French prison?
About 3.5 months, but then we came to a point where I think the Brits took as long as possible to cooperate with paperwork, but by the time the French got it, they didn't want anything to do with it. I had this extradition hearing, and I had obviously this is a day of my life where there are two divergent paths. One is that I'm going to be taken back almost immediately. I'm going to be held on remand in Belmarsh, possibly a year longer, before any trial. Yeah, they're going to break me that way. Or I'm free that night, back with Annie, my mates, and everything else, you know, family. And so I'm sitting outside this courtroom, and even though I was an atheist at the time, I've been doing positive affirmations, trying to stop myself being extradited. I remember sitting outside this chair outside the court, just rocking backwards and forwards, going, I will not be extradited, I will not be extradited, I will not be extradited. All I could do to cope with the, I'd say, high tension of the situation. Then I walked in, and it was like the hearing just started. My interpreter just turned around to me and said, "You're free." I said, "What?" He said, "You're free." I said, "All right." I looked at the judge, and he said, "Yeah, you're free." And then obviously I went back to prison, got my stuff, and came out in my Middlesbrough football shirt, which I say, in terms of popularising my case, that was the best thing I ever did.
Okay, so you was a free man in France, but the British government, the UK government, still, you was a wanted man in their eyes.
Yeah.
So tell me what happened when you left the court in France.
Yeah, well, this was quite amazing. We had, I came out, obviously met my brothers, his famous pictures on the front page of newspapers hugging when I come out and stuff. Made a brief statement to the media, jumped in a car, decided I've got to make a bigger statement to the media, and came back round again. And then the Mail on Sunday booked me into this top-notch hotel in Paris called the Hotel Raphael. But yeah, so eventually I came back to the UK. I'd sort of run out really of things to blow the whistle on. I came back on the 21st of August 2000. And then had to sort of get a life together here, and it took 2 years to put me on trial.
Okay, so was you arrested as soon as you came back from across the border into the UK?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, I had these. Give me an idea how big the case was at the time. I was rolling news that day, coming across the channel on this ferry with all these journalists. Yeah, so they're all coming to interview me and stuff.
So did they put you in prison immediately when you came back to the UK?
No. Well, this is one of the funniest things. Is I get off the ferry, and of course I get come off the police. Lead me away to this room. Would you really come to this room? Yeah, of course. It's all been arranged before. So we sit in this room, and this copper turns around to me and says, "I'm sorry about this, but I've got to arrest you under the 1989 Official Secrets Act." That's what this guy said. Literally said it like that.
What was the judgment of the trial?
Well, I was convicted on 3 counts of the Official Secrets Act, because I'd also revealed a telephone tap as well. I wasn't allowed to argue that was an unlawful telephone tap because there was no reason for it, but that's another thing about them. And because I'd done time awaiting extradition, the judge gave me 6 months, and I think I must hold the record for the lowest sentence ever given at the Bailey. Which is obviously, I tell you, the worst thing in your life is going back to prison. Been there once, yeah, okay. Stephen Fry's been to prison once, yeah, Stephen Fry the actor. But to actually go back to prison is the most depressing experience you can ever go through. This time, obviously, it was hardcore. In France, I was treated as what was jokingly called the VIP section, where all the French public servants were middle class people, whereas in Britain I went into Belmarsh, which is a maximum security prison.
Tell me about your time in Belmarsh.
Say crazy, obviously. I turn up then, obviously they all know me from the newspaper, so I'm a bit of a celeb. So you are slightly worried, oh, someone's going to have a go at you because you are the celeb. And I had some funny things, like I was chewing about half an hour for the phone. Just about to pick the phone up, and this guy comes over and says to me, "I'm next." Whole place goes silent, they're all looking at me. Now, if I back down at this moment, they've all seen this. They're going to make my life a fucking misery, basically. But I'm scared to shit. I've got to stand up to this guy, so I do it. Just say, "No, mate, I've been queuing in," and just got the phone and started dialing. But I knew how to do that. I knew if I hadn't done that, they'd been bullied to shit there, basically. Also, I remember playing pool with this guy, and it was like playing pool, and he was a bit weird. So I was trying to make small talk with him. I said, "So when you're getting out?" And he said, "I can't for parole in 2021. This is 2002, yeah. Thought, what the fucking hell's he done? So I found out that he was actually a serial killer. He'd actually killed 4 people. He'd actually been caught as well, because he'd killed one and left him in the boot of his car, and the body had decomposed in his car, and obviously the neighbours had complained, and they'd forensicated it and realised that he was also responsible for a load of other murders as well.
Did you have to share a cell with anybody?
Yeah. I had a cell by myself in France. So in France I had a conversation with Carlos the Jackal, who was once the world's most wanted terrorist, who was in the same nick. I had a word with him through the windows, basically. That was one of the funny ones. But
What did you chat about with him?
he wanted to know about the Gaddafi plot, but he was going to report that back to the Libyans. I wasn't going to give the name away of the agent, obviously. And so I didn't really remember it at the time, but we now do know that was Ramadan Abedi. But I wasn't going to give him that anyway, obviously, because anybody in Libya was going to get bloody executed, weren't they? So I'm not going to give that away.
How did it feel then when you got back into like mainstream society?
I came out, well, the thing was, we actually, to start, when I come back to London, I managed to get the mail on Sunday to pay my rent. I had to get away from London because they were doing all sorts of things, like trying to follow me around, things like that.
Who was following you?
I don't know who's following me, obviously. I don't know who's following me, but I saw people who definitely were following me. I'd go to 3 different places in London, and on the same day, you'd see the same people in these 3 different places. You know, there's clearly people following me around and trying to let me know I'm being followed around to try and wear me down psychologically. Yeah?
So these are Secret Service agents, you think?
Well, I never know. I never know, who it is. It could be the secret societies. It could be private security. Who knows? And if I say something, people say, oh, it wasn't us, so he's lying. But no, I have no idea who it is. How well I know these people are. Now, obviously, we have suspects, but I can't say who it is. But I was definitely being followed around, no doubt about it, obviously. But I started to go on, this is where I started to go on a different journey when I was in Belmarsh. I had this moment when a prisoner came to me and asked me to read the Bible to him, and I was such an atheist at the time, I wondered whether I should be filling them with nonsense. And I read the Sermon on the Mount and realised what I'd been doing, and had my first experience of kind of being filled by the Spirit and energy coming through me and filling me a good energy. But at the time I didn't know what it was, so I felt very odd. Suddenly, I've always been a prolific reader, but switched my reading completely to the esoteric after reading the Bible Code, would you believe? I don't know if you know about the Bible Code, written by Michael Drossman. It was written in the 90s. But crucially, it showed the Bible, world events were recorded in codes in the Bible almost to the exact date, way beyond chance. That there was therefore the possibility of a divine power, a divine being. I'd been an atheist up till then. And that got me into the whole thing about the Templars, the Freemasons, learning around stories around the crucifixion, re-examining the Bible, Egyptian mystery schools, the whole lot, and obviously the stone circles, Avebury, Nazca lines, the whole thing. I went through that massive education in that at the time. And I knew in all of this, in the esoteric, there was a secret that nobody else had understood, and that I was making progress in understanding it. I just couldn't quite get there. And I became spiritual after reading about Kabbalah and quantum mechanics and noting that the concepts of creation were the same. Decided to go on a spiritual journey on the 27th of December 2004, saying, my life's a pile of shit, can't see where it's going at the moment. They seem to be keeping me pinned down. Let's see if this idea that some sort of faith or something might work, live in love and try and believe there's some kind of divine guidance, perhaps something will come to me. And it did. Everything changed around very quickly, basically. But in May 2005, I was approached by the 9/11 Truth Movement. And at this point, obviously, I stopped the esoteric, even though I was making progress secret, because that was obviously something more pressing. And obviously, having looked at the 9/11 evidence very, very quickly, concluded this was some kind of inside job. And I say, we can talk about 9/11, but there's nothing there. There is no evidence to support the official story that 19 Muslim hijackers hijacked planes, flew them into buildings, and they fell down due to fire and gravity. There's absolutely no evidence to support that proposition whatsoever.
Okay, let's move on from the 9/11 Truth Movement. So you have an alter ego called Dolores. When did Dolores first come on the scene?
When I was about 4, basically, I put my mum's nightie on. So you quote, I got a little stiffy. And then obviously when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, I used to put my mum's stuff on and things like that. Obviously all very, very secret. I was never an effeminate man. I played football and cricket and stuff like that, very sporty, squash. I sometimes think that my need to be Dolores comes from a need, now I understand in spiritual terms, the need to curb my kind of masculine need for risk and daring do, basically. I need to balance that with a more sort of feminine side.
So you always had these urges to, was it to put women's clothes on for like an erotic feeling? Is
Yeah,
that
no,
why
I'm
you
going to say it was
started to do
erotic,
it?
definitely. Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, people have said, is it a fetish? But no, I mean, I don't have to have women's clothes on to have a sexual relationship. No, it was part of that. It was part of, when it did happen, of exploring a new identity with Annie. I'd actually been a tranny, obviously, say as a teenager and stuff like that, even in my university years occasionally. Girlfriend stuff, things like that. And then when I was going out with Annie, I sort of confessed to this, very close to her obviously, and that was when really Dolores was born, and it became more of another character basically.
So is that something that you did together with Annie? Annie Mashon was your girlfriend at the time?
That's right, with Annie Mashon, my girlfriend, yeah. That was all part of our lives basically, and also when I was on the run as well, you know. Yeah, and I say, you know, I make no apologies for it. I say I've had to deal with a lot of conflict in my lifetime, all the way through my life, in, say, university, school, MI5, against the British government, everything. And I really do believe that I had to balance that masculine, which is a lot of adrenaline and, say, a lot of risk-taking, which you sometimes get wrong, and things get disastrous, and you get depressed when your testosterone plummets or whatever. But I found the whole Dolores thing was a good way of just, I say somebody's got to do some research on this, but I'm convinced my body chemistry changes, that I become much more relaxed, become essentially more of a feminine character. It's not just about putting on clothes, yeah? And obviously as a result of that, then with Annie, I did start to go out to places, dressed basically, to tranny bars, and I just used to go to normal places. And then I had a period of some time after it. I mean, obviously, the thing with Annie, it was done abroad.
So you was doing cross-dressing as Dolores when you were on the run with Annie abroad?
Yeah, and we started to go out. And well, after I came back, you know, it was actually just, the first thing I did after I got my tag off was shot off to Amsterdam again, which was my favourite place because you can get legal weed there, can't you? So I go there on holiday because I don't want to go somewhere on holiday where I can't get any weed. So I go there all the time. So we shot off to Amsterdam, went to this tranny club, went out for the first time in Amsterdam. I thought it was complete natural, that's it. Had these weird things like blokes trying to chat me up for the first time. It was the first time I'd been out like that, which is obviously a completely new experience for me because I'm not at all gay. And then that carried on from that. But Annie wouldn't go out with me in Britain in case I got recognised. And one of the funniest things is when I stopped going out with her, I just said to her, right, I will come out as Dolores. And I was living down in Totnes. The guy called Stephen Hopwood, who's doing lots of the truth movement down there, truth stuff. And I said, I'm going to go out. He knew about this for a while, I was a friend. And I said, I'm going to go out as Dolores at the New Year party in 2006, 2007. And he said, okay, yeah, so I did. And it was quite funny because I was standing there and this woman standing next to me, I spoke, and she said, "You're David Shayler." I went, "How the hell did you recognise me?" She said, "I didn't. I recognised your voice. I heard you speaking at the Big Green Gathering earlier this year and I recognised your voice." So I did get recognised, but not for the reason what I looked like. And so yeah, I just go out to parties, stuff like that. Over the years, I tried an experiment where I went 9 days consecutive dressed as Dolores, see what that was like. Yeah, a bit of a pain in the arse really. I couldn't really take it. It wasn't, just got boring after a while. But still dip in and out of it now.
Right, so that's very different then from, you're not saying that you're a woman by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not at all,
Okay.
no. I've had to say, I've had the funny thing where, as you go out dressed, you never sure how you respond. And I remember this group of lads came up to me, I was in London once on the tube. One of them goes, "Do you think you're a woman?" I said, "No, I'm obviously a bloke dressed as a woman." He went, "Oh, right, okay." So yes, own it. No, of course I'm not a bloody woman, I'm a bloke dressed as a woman. But I get a strange response. I mean, I think there are certain people who do fancy Dolores, and I think some otherwise heterosexual blokes do have a problem with that, yeah? That they'll suddenly see you and they see the long legs and the fake titties and long hair and makeup, and they think, they sort of slightly sort of strange sort of sexual feeling. So I think that can cause problems as well. But I am so eternally grateful to God that I am a human male. Yeah, I have a memory of being about 15, 16, looking at a biology textbook and seeing that the difference in hormones between men and women, and testosterone sort of goes like this, and women are like, all over the fucking place with their hormones, and just looking at that and thinking, oh my God, I'm glad I don't have to live with that, basically. And all the things the advantages, being a man gives you, just the sense of presence and strength, and again, they try and pretend men and women are the same, but they're really not. There's a difference in the way our brains process information. And men tend to have I'm not saying all men by any means, but men tend to process information systematically and rationally and make decisions on that basis. Women process information emotionally and make it on that basis. And that is a very, very different character. And obviously men have testosterone coursing through them, which it does make you take risks. It does make you do all sorts of weird things, and quite often to impress women. But there's no idea. I don't follow this idea. Testosterone does not make you violent. It gives you initiative, makes you want to have sex. That's very, very different.
So would you say then that when you dress up as Dolores, you're essentially a drag queen?
No, not at all, because drag queens tend to be gay men who dress as women in like a pantomime way. It's like, like pantomime dames, aren't they? Whereas trannies like me are actually obviously trying to be as realistically as possible and look like a woman and behave like a woman and talk like a woman, which obviously does require a certain degree of effort, but I say has given me different perspectives on the world. But I say it's about exploring different identities, different consciousnesses. But, it doesn't stop the fact that I'm still Dave and I'm still a bloke,
So when you dress up, when you present as Dolores, you use the word tranny, so you would class yourself as a transvestite?
Yeah, the word I use is tranny because in some ways transvestite can just be somebody who dresses up in the clothes. I mean, I've been at lots of tranny clubs and met men who are quite well dressed up as women, but they're just still blokes. They're drinking pints and things, So that I want to get the idea of it's not just quite that. I am sort of taking on the total persona of a woman, but I have no desire for that to be permanent. That's just a temporary thing, a type of consciousness I want to explore and see what kind of reaction I get to that. That's completely different from somebody who wants to be a transsexual and completely change their body and start taking hormones. God at one point in my meditations did give me an insight into what it was like to have female hormones, and it was frightening. It really was. Not long, a few seconds, but it's not good.
So is it then some kind of thrill that you get to be able to try and pass as a woman and to get a reaction from other people?
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, it is in a sense getting a reaction, yeah. Well, there's one sense in what it was almost like hiding from being David Shayler for good reasons, because obviously I had quite a high public profile, and a lot of people, there's a lot of crazy things about me, so I never knew how people were going to react to me. So people might come on to pubs and start arguing with me and stuff like that, or might accuse me of being a traitor or something. Not do that very often, but most people come and just want to chat about things, but you don't know that. But I did find dressing as Dolores completely deflected that they suddenly couldn't come and attack David Shayler, basically. So it was partly a defence mechanism, as well as chilling me out. So I don't know why. And this is why I say I dropped the persona of a woman. I suddenly don't seem to have to bear the world on my shoulders in the same way as I do as a man. There seems to be something innate in the male psychology of responsibility in terms of protecting and providing and so on, and sorting things out, and I don't have that when I'm Dolores. I seem to somehow obviate it. I say it's all curious, I don't really understand it, obviously. I really don't understand it, but yeah. And, I'm quite a convincing tranny. I've seen the pictures of myself, I can be. And, people do fancy Dolores, and so I have to explain that I don't fancy men,
Does it give you a bit of a sexual kick or a thrill
Yeah.
when men try and hit on you as Dolores?
It's not a sexual thrill when men try and hit on me as such, but it does make me feel like more of a woman, that I'm sort of doing this properly, I'm convincing enough and adopt the persona of a woman enough that men otherwise heterosexual men want to chat me up. But it's not a sexual thing, no. Not in that sense, no. But I would describe myself as a lesbian, basically. And I have found that a lot of women do like having sex with tranny men. They really do. It's different, obviously, for them as well. But yeah, there are women like that. I mean, I've actually had relationships that started where I've met women first as Dolores and got off with them, and then sort of gone out of a relationship. And obviously some of them it's been a problem because it was really kind of Dolores getting off with them and not Dave.
So I know a lot of feminists that would be aghast at what you're saying and being, putting on your woman costume. What would you say to those women about why you do it?
Well, in some ways, they should be pleased that I'm trying to explore female consciousness and female identity. Now, obviously, they'll say I'm doing it in an obvious, quite sexual way. I mean, I'm not one of these guys who wears a flowery dress down to the ankles. I do obviously advertise a kind of female sexuality about me. But I'm making a point there that is a very important part of woman, that we don't want to have these discussions these days because of the whole woke thing and the whole gender thing. But part of, I can relate it back to the Bible. It was one of the reasons that God essentially created Eve was to essentially serve Adam, to be equal under the law, but nevertheless to be tending to his needs, part of which is sexual. We can't get away from that. And I say, I can't. And somehow I've joked with people before saying, it would be good to be gay, much easier to get sex, But I'm not. I don't fancy men. I fancy women tremendously. And people say it's an animalistic thing, but it's not. It really isn't. That we are looking at women who look like goddesses, They take the form of goddesses, and that's why we're attracted to them. But at the same time, we kind of realise as well that that's their outer form of woman. The relationship, really, I think, and again, people accuse me of sexism, but it's everything I've seen, is that men really there to educate women, to keep them on, away from their own worst instincts at times.
So did you find you had more success with women as Dolores than you did as Dave?
There was a period when that happened over a couple of years. I got off with about 3 women. I wasn't getting off with anybody as Dave, and I got off with about 3 women and went out with them briefly.
That's interesting. So why do you think there's been a massive rise or a massive push for this gender agenda now, this gender ideology over recent years?
I can't first say as well, the woke hate me because I self-identify as a tranny and they think that's offensive. And I have to say, well, what am I going to offend myself? You know what I mean? That's how I self-identify. You're imposing on me if you don't allow me to self-identify as a tranny, basically. But yeah, it's all part of what I call the war on mankind that's been waged through chemtrails and EMF, 5G. It's all part of that. It's all part of and through the pharmaceutical industry, of course, not just in terms of the vaccines, but in terms of the things for supposedly mental health problems. It's all part of that messing around. I say jokingly, in the end of days, what it comes down to is 2 chemicals that are interlinked: testosterone and tetrahydrocannabinol. These are things they want to obviously suppress testosterone and keep people from taking tetrahydrocannabinol, which is very good with the endocannabinoid system for regulating hormones and so on, which leads to good health and clear thinking and stuff like that. So they are pushing it as, again, part of the weakening of society, along with, I think, veganism as well. I mean, people say I don't believe in veganism. I do. I believe in hemp veganism, but that's the only veganism I believe in, because otherwise you're not going to get your nutrients in a vegan diet. It's a part of weakening, confusing young people, and it's all part. I mean, psychiatry to me is just pure evil. I think the whole even the medical industry should be disowning itself from psychiatry. It's really got nothing to do with medicine at all, and everything to do with pharmaceuticals that are based on petrochemicals. This is how crazy it is. They just don't, even when you look at their own research, these things don't work. They show no marginal improvement. Once you've allowed for return to mean and the placebo effect, these things don't even work. So it's part of that theme of attacking mankind. But I say, obviously, how do I resolve things? I resolve things by virtue of law and truth. Now, you are born either a biological male or a biological female. End of. We, though, are higher creatures, and to say there are the consciousness up there we need to experiment with. We have to do that in one form that God gives us. God says, here you go into battle with this form I give you, and it's up to you to get on with that, to see if you can still keep my covenant. So the idea you're going to change your gender is really trying to avoid a mission that God's given you. Well, that said, though, of course, the law is all about protecting a perpetrator, a victim, from a perpetrator. The law is not about protecting you. You are sovereign about what you do and what goes into your body, as long as that doesn't affect anybody else. So I'd say under the law, if you want to go and cut your tits off and take loads of estrogen, that's your business. And I'm going to strongly recommend you don't do that for all sorts of reasons to do with health and spirituality and so on. But ultimately, if you want to go and do it, basically. But don't expect people to pay for it either. The NHS is overwhelmed at the moment. Why would you think you take a priority mutilating your own body over people that genuinely need health care? That's not the sign of good mental health or good spiritual health, basically. So that's my view under truth and law. And to me, that's as plain as it should be. And as I say, nobody is born in the wrong body. It's all a pretty psyop on people so they can sell more pharmaceutical drugs at one level. But to say just to create confusion in young people. And, you know, I was born in 65. I find it very hard to think how the country I grew up in is the country I now live in. It's just absolutely astonishing to see what has happened to it in all sorts of ways. And I think obviously this wokeness was a big part of that, because it's not the first time woke came. It's just recently it became more exposed, but it had been around a long time, you know, bubbling under and sometimes popping up. But it's all this idea, you know, I live under the law. I believe in, you know, equal rights for same-sex couples. If they want to get married, that's fine. When they get married in churches, absolutely fine by me. What goes on with consenting adults, all their business, yeah? That's what I say as well about me dressing women's clothes. Why do people get upset about it? That's up to me what I wear, basically. None of your business. So you know, saying it makes absolutely clear under the law. I'm not some, you know, Tommy Robinson bigot or whatever. I'm coming from a liberal background. I was writing articles in my student newspaper against the Conservatives in the 80s when they were passing, you know, excluding learning about homosexuality from education. I mean, that seemed over the top. You know, people may want to learn about these things in an educational way, but that's it. You're not shoving it down people's throats. You're just saying these things exist. You know, there are different types of ways people get together and create societies and create relationships. But the idea of shoving this down kids' throats is just wrong on all levels.
Yeah. So, what do you think about the men nowadays that are identifying as females as a gender? Their gender being female or being woman, and then crossing sex-based boundaries into women's spaces. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think the whole thing about this sort of trans rights thing of being able to go where biological women go, obviously, again, it's like if you're a basic compassionate being under the law, you put yourself in someone's shoes. Now, obviously, when I go out, I've never used women's toilets, women's facilities, never done anything like that before. Wouldn't, you know, even though it's not strictly against the law or whatever, no, I've got respect for women. I don't want to scare women by, you know, I understand it's not everybody's cup of tea, so I don't want to impose myself. I go to the male toilets or whatever.
What's been your experiences as Dolores in the male toilets?
Well, obviously, you're standing there in front of you, right? Like this, so you get a sort of double take when people come in. They go, oh, right, okay. But if I place us chat to you and say, shouldn't you be in the ladies? And I always say that. Don't want to scare the ladies, they can, you know, sort of thing.
Obviously, the transgender agenda's in the news and it's a real hot topic at the moment. There's a culture war that's going on. Have you been out as Dolores since the Supreme Court ruling?
I think I have on one occasion in London.
Right, I was just wondering if there's been any change of attitudes at all towards
No, not at all. I think people get an idea of what's a transvestite and what a transsexual is, I think. So I've had no problems since. I've only been out once, but yeah, I didn't have any problems then.
Is there anything else that you would like to talk about before we go?
Yeah, just briefly mention, obviously, to do with the two things I'd like to mention. Obviously, I did all the research into the pandemic. And just to say, if people want to read my research, it's all there on the bookofthelaw.org website. Okay. And I do recommend that people read this for themselves to show, as I've been explaining the case of 9/11, There is absolutely no evidence to support the idea of any kind of pandemic or deadly disease or even new disease. Government's own figures show there were no excess deaths outside lockdowns. There were only excess deaths in lockdown because they murdered people with midazolam. And then the excess deaths start after the introduction of the jabs in 2021, and they carried on going to now. We've got obvious, clear evidence of what is going on here. And in fact, I even wrote an article in 2014 based on a television series called Utopia, saying that this was predictive programming, because in that series they have a deadly virus is released, but the virus is not the problem, it's the vaccine's the problem. And I said this was predictive programs. That was 2014. And the other thing is that I do believe, obviously, all I talk about, that the age of politics is over. You know, choosing between left and right is like choosing between Jeffrey Epstein and Rolf Harris to babysit your teenage daughters. So when the state imposes Ian Huntley on you, that's Zionism. And so, people out there are fed up with this left and right thing. They're fed up with the whole political class. A lot of them, the journalists, the bloody lawyers, the NGOs, the real people, I've seen it around the country, are absolutely fed up with the back teeth of this. And I say this is part of a wider spiritual change. We're in the seventh age of creation now. And the other day, I finally got the final date, which I really feel duty bound to mention to people. What happened was I'd been looking at Three Eye Atlas, and you know how it's not a traditional comet. There's all sorts of theories about what might be going on. But one thing I did glean was it's supposed to be returning towards Earth around, and it'll be close to around about the 15th, 16th of December. I then got a few codes from God based on the Bible, worked these codes out, and those codes came out to the 15th of December.
Is this a comet you're talking about?
It's whatever three. What's it called again? 3AI Atlas is called, but is whatever it is. It doesn't behave like a normal comet, we can say that for certain. It does seem to be showing some sort of signs of being intelligently powered or intelligently designed. I don't know how true those are, obviously. But I would also say they would probably be part of something about what appears to be the craziness going on the planet at the moment, in both ways. People waking up, and but obviously the other side trying to suppress that awakening. But so I've been given this date very, very clearly, that this is a date when humanity will know that consciousness will shift. Be over a 3-day period from the 14th to the 16th of December. So
2025, this year?
This year, yep, before Christmas. I'm going to be 60 on the 24th of December. Part of my claim for who I am is I was born at 9:13 in the morning, just after the sun rises after 3 days of solstice. So the sun's resurrecting on the horizon, and that was when I was born, 24th of December.
So the claim that who you are, and who are you?
I'm Jesus Christ, if you're in the West. I'm the one chosen by God, who is foretold not just by Christians and Jews, but in all cultures, in Islam, amongst people like the Hopi Indians, the Sioux, the Indonesians. This is held, and there's obviously other myths of the reincarnating God-man or the resurrecting God-man. And it turns out it's me. I am the last one of those. I am the chosen one of God. People have obviously criticised me about this for being mad or egotistical, but my claim is unique in that it's based upon documents with my name in that massively predate my birth. And these are things like the Rod of Aaron and the initial letters of the 12 tribes of Israel will tell you that David Shayler is the Messiah or chosen one, or the Lord, depending on your religious reference points. I've come here on many occasions as the Buddha, as Confucius, more recently as Che Guevara, Lawrence of Arabia, Benjamin Franklin, Percy Shelley, the Romantic poet. And every time I've learnt the law and learnt who I am, basically. I've done that on 144,000 incarnations. That's 144,000 on. Now in this final incarnation, I'm here to tell people the date I've just given you, the final date of the end times. And it's very simple. The other unique aspect of my claim is the law, and shown how the law of love, the commands given in the Bible, love God and love your neighbour as you love yourself, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets, is the basis of English law. And we can use that for land rights, we can use it to counsel usury. So we can, this is a real practical spirituality. It's not something happening airy-fairy. It's a million miles from the New Age. But like Christ in the Bible, I say, have you not read in the scriptures? I go through the real meaning of the Ten Commandments, the real meaning of the Sermon on the Mount, but then he says, is it not written in your law? And I show how this law is outlined in Magna Carta, in the Declaration of Rights. It's in the American Declaration of Independence. It's in a piece of case law in this country, all showing that the law of love your neighbour is the paramount and mandatory law and comes above anything in Babylon, or Mammon as they might want to call it. Mammon in the Bible is translated as money is the root of all evil, but the word actually means is the monetary system is the root of all evil. And that, of course, is the bankers, the central bankers, the physical manifestation of all this. And we're now paying 4 billion a week to the Bank of England under a secret deed of indemnity. Can you believe this? It's supposed to be an open society. So this is where it all comes together. The Bible predicts that there will come those who are Jews or not. They are the synagogue of Satan, and that's the Zionist to me. So this is all the end times. It's all meant to happen like this, but I'm here, not for some egotistical reason. Obviously going through this process has been an extremely peaceful process, so a very difficult process, given what people have done towards me and said about me and stuff like that, but have come through, and I'm here having created the Christ consciousness here to teach it to other people. And if people were to truly behave like Christ's, there's no way the world would be in the state it's in now.
And finally, where can people find you online if they want to hear more from you?
They can email me on dmshayler@yahoo.co.uk or at www.bookofthelaw.org, and there's a documentary at www.thelifeofdave.org. That's the best place to find out about me. But really, I've never had a chance to pull my stuff together because I don't have enough access to the internet, but there's stuff about me all over the place from 1997. It's one of those ones really where you've got to go on your own internet journey and find out about me. I've never touched my Wikipedia entry. I've left that to mankind to decide what they think of me. Although I've noticed recently, whenever I've just flick back to it to see what they are saying, it's now being converted to Dolores Kane. Which is just a kind of really childish psyop by them. Very, very childish psyop, basically.
David Shayler, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for letting me go all out. It's been a real pleasure, and so it's nice to be able to get it down and to bring it all together, and to know now that so many people are listening to the message and are ready for us. So cheers, mate.